6 months had passed since Gregory's death, and the emptiness in Emma's heart still felt as raw as it did the day he was gone. The house that once echoed with their shared laughter now felt hollow, a painful reminder of the love she had lost. One quiet evening, as she sat alone in her living room, the doorbell rang. Emma wasn't expecting anyone, but when she opened the door, standing there was Ethan, Gregory's old friend. His face was warm, his eyes gentle, and in his hands was a bouquet of flowers. Ethan smiled softly, his presence almost a relief in Emma's silent grief. "Ethan, I thought I'd stop by. How are you holding up?" Emma, caught off guard by his sudden appearance, managed a weak smile. "Emma, I'm managing, I guess." Ethan's voice softened, and he stepped inside, his concern evident. "Ethan, you don't have to go through this alone, Emma. I'm here for you. You always have me to lean on." She was taken aback by his words. She hadn't really talked to anyone about how she was feeling in months. Gregory's death left a wound so deep. She'd felt disconnected from everything, even the people who cared about her. Ethan seemed to read her hesitation. "Ethan, I brought wine. Just a little something to help take the edge off. How about it?" Emma hesitated, glancing at the empty space where Gregory used to sit, but she nodded slowly. "All right, just for a little while." As they sat together, the quietness between them wasn't uncomfortable. It felt easy. Ethan was a calming presence, and his conversations never pushed her too hard. He didn't try to force her to smile or act happy. He simply allowed her to be, and for the first time in months, Emma felt like she could breathe a little easier. The weeks that followed saw Emma and Ethan spending more and more time together. At first, it was just casual coffee dates, long walks, and simple conversations, but slowly they began to rely on each other more. Ethan would show up with groceries when Emma was too overwhelmed to leave the house, or drop by with a book or movie he thought she might like. Each time he was more thoughtful, more considerate. He listened to her when she spoke, never interrupting, always supportive. He was the friend she never thought she needed, yet somehow the one she couldn't imagine her days without. And as the days turned into weeks, Emma found herself sharing more about her grief, her fears, even her moments of weakness. Ethan never judged her. He didn't try to fix her, he just understood. "Ethan, you know, Emma, you don't have to be so strong all the time. It's okay to let people in." "Emma, I'm not used to asking for help." "Ethan, you don't have to ask. I'm here. I want to be here." Emma's chest tightened as she looked at him. There was something about Ethan that made her feel safe, something that made her believe in the possibility of happiness again. The emotional connection between them grew deeper. One evening as they sat in her living room, the air between them felt different. Their casual chats were now tinged with something unspoken, a current of longing that neither could ignore. Ethan had always been attentive to her, whether it was a gentle touch on her shoulder or a reassuring hand when the conversation became too heavy. But tonight, something shifted. The tension between them was palpable. As Emma turned to grab her wine glass, she caught Ethan watching her, his gaze soft but intense. She could feel her heart beating faster. Ethan had always been kind, but tonight, his eyes seemed to linger a little longer, as though he were seeing her in a new light. "Ethan, I'm really glad you let me in, Emma. It means a lot." His voice was low, filled with sincerity. It made Emma's breath catch in her throat. She smiled softly. "Emma, I'm glad too. You've been a good friend through all of this." Ethan leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. There was an unspoken question in the air, one Emma wasn't sure she was ready to answer. "Ethan, you know, it's okay to be happy again. You deserve it." Her heart raced. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything else faded. Ethan's hand reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. The tenderness in his touch made Emma feel something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Something soft, warm, and comforting. Without thinking, she leaned in, and their lips met. It was tentative at first, almost unsure, but as the kiss deepened, the world around them disappeared. In the weeks that followed, Emma's feelings for Ethan became undeniable. Their connection was electric, and she found herself thinking about him constantly. Every moment spent with him was one of comfort, passion, and emotional intimacy. Ethan was the kind of man who listened when she spoke, cared when she hurt, and offered her a future where the pain of the past could be left behind. But even as her heart grew fonder of him, a small part of her held back. She had lost so much in her life already. Was it wise to let someone else in? Could she truly move on from Gregory's memory? Yet when Ethan was around, those doubts seemed to vanish. When he looked at her, everything felt right. "Ethan, you're so beautiful when you smile, Emma." His words melted the walls Emma had built around her heart. She couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her like that, as if she were the only person in the room. As days turned into weeks, Emma and Ethan's relationship evolved. The physical distance between them grew smaller. Ethan would reach for her hand while they walked, or his touch would linger just a little longer when they hugged. Emma found herself drawn at him more than she had expected, and when he was with her, it felt like nothing else mattered. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, their hands brushed lightly. Ethan turned to her, his expression filled with affection. "Ethan, I want you to know, Emma, I'm here for the long haul. I care about you, and I'm not going anywhere." His words sent a shiver down her spine. For the first time in months, Emma felt like she was part of something new, something that could heal the wounds she had buried deep inside her. Emma didn't say anything in return. Instead, she simply looked into his eyes, allowing herself to feel the warmth of his presence. "Emma, thank you, Ethan." As they sat there, the tension between them palpable, Emma knew her feelings for Ethan had grown into something she hadn't anticipated. Something she didn't fully understand yet, but something she was willing to explore. The affair between Emma and Ethan grew deeper and more intense with each passing day. What had begun as a comforting, even healing, connection was now consuming every part of Emma's life. She found herself craving Ethan's presence, longing for the way he made her feel. With him, the memories of Gregory, while still painful, seemed to fade into the background. Ethan was her anchor, her escape, and she began to depend on him more than she ever imagined. Days blurred into nights, and Emma lost herself in the rhythm of their time together. Long walks, late-night talks, laughter that filled the void left by Gregory's absence. They were constantly together, exploring the deep emotional connection between them. In Ethan, Emma found the kind of love and attention that she hadn't known she needed, especially after losing Gregory. As they spent more time together, Ethan's gestures became even more tender. He was always there when she needed him, helping with the business, taking care of the house, and most importantly, offering a sense of security Emma had been craving. His attention seemed to know no bounds. He supported her in ways that were comforting, almost overwhelming, but Emma embraced it. "Ethan, you know, Emma, I've always admired how strong you are. You're handling everything so well. I'm here for you always." His words, like everything else he did, made her heart swell. He was perfect, too perfect. There were no games with Ethan. He showed her love and loyalty in a way she hadn't experienced before. Slowly, Emma began to feel something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. She believed in him. She believed in them. The passion between Emma and Ethan was undeniable. Their affair was no longer just a means of emotional support. It was all-consuming. There was nothing but the two of them. They spent endless hours together, their conversations flowing easily, their bodies entwined more and more as the days went by. Every moment felt like they were starting a new chapter, a chapter where nothing from the past existed, a chapter where only their love mattered. Ethan's gentle yet intense affection for Emma overwhelmed her. She had become the center of his world, and in return, he became her world. But even as their connection grew, there were moments when Emma would pause and look at him, just for a second, when she caught a glimpse of something else in his eyes. Was it ambition, or just the intensity of his love? But she quickly brushed the thoughts away. Why question it now? She was in love. He was in love with her. That was all that mattered. Despite the overwhelming affection they shared, there were still moments where Emma couldn't ignore a certain unease, but only fleetingly. Ethan, though the perfect companion, often seemed to have an unspoken focus on certain aspects of Gregory's business. The conversations about future plans, the casual mentions of how Gregory had handled things, it all seemed harmless. "Ethan, you know, Emma, Gregory always had big ideas for expanding the company. Maybe you could do something with that. I'd love to help. You've got such a great head for business." Emma didn't think much of it. After all, Ethan had always been business savvy, and he'd shown nothing but care for her since Gregory's death. But there was something about the way he said it, the way he mentioned Gregory's plans with such familiarity, that tugged at the back of her mind. Still, she pushed it aside. Ethan was right. He was only trying to help. And the way he spoke about Gregory's legacy only made Emma feel that he truly understood her grief. He wanted her to thrive, to succeed, to take Gregory's vision further. That was all. As the weeks went by, Emma found herself more and more entwined in Ethan's world. The more time she spent with him, the more she leaned on him, not just for emotional support, but for guidance in the business that now felt so daunting without Gregory. Ethan offered help with everything, from meetings to decisions that Emma wasn't sure how to navigate. His suggestions were always thoughtful, and slowly, Emma began to let him in more, trusting him with the pieces of her life that she had once kept locked away. She became more dependent on him, not just emotionally, but practically. Ethan was everywhere in her life now. His presence felt in every decision, every change she made. But as Emma continued to fall deeper into their affair, The relationship also began to shift. The more she leaned on him, the more she realized that she couldn't seem to make a decision without consulting him first. The business decisions, the personal ones, she sought his approval in everything. It was as if his influence had woven itself into the very fabric of her life. One evening, as they sat in the cozy living room, Emma felt herself caught between two feelings. She was still in love with Ethan, but something in her gut whispered that there was more to him than she understood. It wasn't a feeling of betrayal, no, not at all, but there was something hidden beneath the surface. Something about the way he spoke so often about the business, how involved he was with everything Emma did, even in the smallest details. But every time that doubt began to surface, all it took was one look from Ethan, one soft touch, one gentle word, and the fear melted away. Emma believed in him. She trusted him completely. He loved her. He had to. Ethan, you're perfect, Emma. I want you to have everything you've ever dreamed of. You deserve the world, and I'll help you get there. His words were comforting, and in that moment, Emma believed them. She wanted to believe that Ethan was exactly what he appeared to be, the perfect man, the perfect partner. And so she pushed all doubts aside. Her love for him and the comfort he provided was enough to drown out the uncertainty. For now, Emma had everything she needed. The morning after another late night together, Emma woke up to a world that would never be the same. The soft, comforting routine of their affair was shattered in an instant. The police had arrived at her doorstep with devastating news. Ethan had been found dead. Emma's heart stopped as the words sunk in. He was dead. Ethan, the man she had fallen so deeply in love with, was gone. Her thoughts were scattered, disbelief consuming her. But before she could process what had happened, they arrested her. The scene unfolded quickly. Police officers swarmed her home, questioning her, searching her belongings, speaking in hurried, hushed tones. She had no answers, no explanations, just a growing feeling of dread tightening around her chest. Emma's mind raced, flashing back to their last moments together. There was nothing out of the ordinary, nothing to suggest this would happen. She hadn't even seen it coming. Officer, we have reason to believe you were the last person to see Ethan alive. Can you explain what happened? Emma tried to speak, tried to defend herself, but no words would come. She was left stunned and confused, her emotions clouding any attempt at clarity. They took her away, and the world she had built around herself and around Ethan crumbled in the blink of an eye. The news spread like wildfire. As the police began their investigation, the whispers grew louder. People who had once supported her, who had once been close, now looked at Emma with suspicion and disdain. The idea that Emma could have killed Ethan, that she could betray someone who loved her so deeply, quickly became a belief that the public embraced. News anchor. In a shocking turn of events, Emma Westbrook, widow of businessman Gregory Westbrook, has been arrested for the murder of her lover, Ethan Hartman. Sources say jealousy may have been the motive, as Emma's affair with Ethan was well known, though public details about their relationship have yet to be confirmed. The next few days felt like a blur, endless interrogations, questions she couldn't answer, and a growing feeling of isolation. The police found evidence that seemed damning: fingerprints, a violent scene in the bedroom, and a motive that the investigators were quick to link to Emma. The narrative was clear. She had killed Ethan. She was the one who had betrayed him, had killed him out of jealousy, out of anger. Her mind struggled to comprehend the accusations. How could they think that? How could they believe she hurt someone she loved? But the more the investigation progressed, the more Emma became the obvious villain in this twisted tale of love and betrayal. Detective asked, "Emma, tell me again. Where were you last night?" Her voice was shaky as she responded, "I was with him. Ethan. I was with him the entire night. We were together, like we always were." The detective's gaze was cold. "Is that so? Because all the evidence points to you, Emma. We found your fingerprints on the weapon, and your alibi doesn't check out." Emma felt the walls closing in. The thought of what she was being accused of felt surreal. Ethan's death was a nightmare that she couldn't wake from. How had it come to this? How had she gone from being the woman in love to the one accused of murder? The days in police custody stretched on, with no one believing her. The media painted her as the ultimate villain, the widow who had fallen for Ethan and betrayed him in the worst way possible. Emma tried to keep herself composed, tried to hold on to her dignity, but the public outcry was too much. They believed the narrative the media had fed them. They believed that Emma had killed Ethan out of a jealous rage. And why wouldn't they? The evidence was all there. News report. Sources close to the investigation suggest that Emma Westbrook was angry over Ethan's growing influence in the business world and her inability to control her feelings. The affair, once thought to be a sweet love story, has turned dark, and it seems that Emma's emotions led her down a deadly path. As Emma sat in her holding cell, the crushing weight of her situation became all too real. She felt alone, abandoned by the very people who should have supported her. Everyone believed she was guilty. She couldn't understand it. She never thought she could be accused of something so heinous, especially not after everything Ethan had done for her, everything they had shared. But the evidence was irrefutable. The bloodied knife, the broken glass, and the loudest voice in the room, public opinion, screamed that Emma had killed Ethan, that she had betrayed him. She was the villain. But what the world didn't know, what the police didn't understand, was that Emma had never killed Ethan out of jealousy or anger. She had done it for a reason that only she knew. The interrogation room was cold, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows over Emma's exhausted face. She sat there, her hands trembling slightly, eyes red from sleepless nights and constant questioning. Her mind had raced since the moment she was arrested, trapped in a web of accusations she couldn't escape. They believed she killed Ethan out of jealousy, out of some twisted, vengeful love. But the truth was far more complicated. The detective sat across from her, pen poised, waiting for the words he had been expecting. He had already made up his mind about her. The evidence was clear, and the story fit perfectly. Emma was a woman scorned, a widow who couldn't handle the thought of losing another lover. But Emma's gaze never wavered. The time for pretending was over. She knew now that she had to tell them everything. The truth about what happened, about what Ethan had done. Detective asked, "It's over, Emma. You don't have to pretend anymore. Just tell us why you killed him. Was it out of jealousy? Anger?" Emma's lips trembled, her voice quiet but firm. "No, it wasn't any of that. I didn't kill him out of jealousy. I killed Ethan because of what he did to my husband." The detective leaned forward, his interest piqued. "What are you talking about?" Emma took a deep breath, gathering the strength to relive the pain she had buried deep inside. This was the moment when everything would change, when the truth would finally come to light. Emma said, "Gregory and I were happy. We were building a life together, our dreams, our business. Ethan was a part of our world, but I never suspected that he had other plans. He was close to Gregory, but all along he was waiting for the right moment. He wanted control of everything. The company, the power, the life that Gregory and I had built together." The detective was silent, listening intently, but Emma could see the disbelief in his eyes. Emma said 6 months before Gregory died, Ethan killed him. He killed Gregory to take over the business. Ethan's ambition was too strong, and he couldn't wait any longer. He saw an opportunity and he took it. I didn't know, not at first, but I found out. I found the truth. Detective asked, "So you're saying Ethan murdered Gregory and then manipulated you? Is that why you're claiming he was the one who really orchestrated everything?" Emma nodded slowly, her heart aching with the weight of her own words. The truth was even worse than she had imagined, but it was the only thing that made sense. She could feel the anger rising in her chest, the familiar heat of betrayal, but it wasn't aimed at herself. It was aimed at Ethan. Emma said, "Ethan was the one who killed Gregory. I had no idea, not at first. I thought his death was just an accident, that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But as I started looking deeper, I saw the signs. The way Ethan was suddenly so involved with the business, how he knew things about Gregory that no one else did. The plans, the investments, it all pointed to him." Emma said, "I started investigating on my own. I looked at Gregory's business records, at his dealings, at everything Ethan had ever said. I found the truth hidden in plain sight. Ethan was the one who had pushed Gregory into risky investments, many decisions that ultimately led to his downfall. And when Gregory started questioning Ethan's involvement, that's when Ethan decided it was time to end it. He couldn't risk Gregory getting in his way, so he made it look like an accident. But it wasn't. He killed Gregory, and I didn't know until it was too late." Detective asked, "So you killed Ethan not because of love, but for revenge?" Emma's eyes hardened, the pain and the grief evident in every word she spoke. Emma said, "Yes, I loved Ethan, but he was never the man I thought he was. I found out what he had done, and I couldn't let him get away with it. He took my husband's life, and I had to make him pay. I couldn't live with the idea of him continuing to manipulate me, continuing to ruin everything Gregory and I had built. Ethan had to pay for what he did." As the confession hung in the air, Emma felt the weight of everything she had kept hidden for so long finally lifting off her shoulders. She had made the right choice, no matter how much it hurt. And in that moment, the twist, the truth, became undeniable. The audience, up until now, had been led to believe that Emma was the villain, the woman who had betrayed Ethan, the woman who had killed the man who loved her out of jealousy. But in reality, Ethan was the true villain. He had manipulated Emma, used her grief to get close, and then taken everything he wanted, including her trust, all while hiding the darkest secret of all, his murder of Gregory. Now, with the truth finally revealed, Emma was no longer just the grieving widow. She was the woman who had taken justice into her own hands. After Emma's confession, the truth about Ethan's manipulation and her act of revenge was revealed to the world. The public, once quick to judge her, now saw her as a victim of Ethan's greed and ambition. Emma had avenged her husband's death, and the media quickly shifted their narrative, portraying her as a strong woman who had been forced into a corner and had taken justice into her own hands. As the investigation concluded, Emma was cleared of all charges. The public opinion about her changed completely. No longer viewed as a jealous murderer, she became a symbol of justice, someone who had taken down the true villain, Ethan. Emma said, "It's strange. I never wanted any of this, but now I can finally breathe. I did what needed to be done for Gregory." With her name cleared and the truth in the open, Emma returned to her life. She honored her husband's memory, determined to continue the business they had built together. But the emotional weight of her actions lingered. She had avenged Gregory, but at a cost. One evening, Emma walked through the park where she and Gregory had once spent happy days. It was a bittersweet moment, realizing how much her life had changed. But in that moment, she made peace with her choices. Emma said, "There's no peace in revenge, but there's peace in knowing justice was done." Emma left behind the darkness of her past, walking into a future where she would continue to honor Gregory's legacy. The world now saw her as the woman who exposed Ethan for who he truly was, and she had reclaimed her life. With the truth finally revealed, Emma's journey was complete. The villain had been defeated, and justice had been served. Emma was no longer the person the world thought she was free. And so Emma's story ended not with triumph, but with quiet resolution. The truth had set her free, and now she could finally move on.